While we're sitting here, there are hundreds, probably more than hundreds, of cyber attack units that works for governments that are engaged in one of the most interesting warfare that we've ever had. I'm not sure if we should call it warfare, but for the sake of this argument, let's continue with this phrase. Right now, we have tens of thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands state-sponsored hackers working for a government engaged in a very, very, very interesting war. And it happens on the same internet that we use to buy tickets for movies, to watch kittens on YouTube, to register kids to school. On the same internet, we have countries attacking one another. But as time goes by, we discover again and again that it's not just one government attacking another government. It is one government attacking commercial companies. We see that. So in the past 10 years, commercial companies have become pawns in the cyber warfare. More and more commercial companies are holding assets that are considered to be very, very valuable with regards to intelligence and other assets. And now we're starting to see another shift. It's not just government towards private companies, it's government towards people. So in some ways, we have to acknowledge this by hurting one person, revealing information about one person, sharing a secret about one person, you can actually change an entire nation. If this is a person that's running for a very important job in this country, or he is in a very sensitive position, or whatever it is, you can actually change the entire country by actually hurting this person. And now, this is a very interesting question. Where does the responsibility of commercial companies, of business companies ends and the responsibility of the government begins? Did anyone went to talk to the CISA of Sony Pictures and told him that, and he's probably here, he's in the Cyberweek, told him that when he builds the infrastructure for security for Sony, he needs to build such an infrastructure that a country could not attack them? The question, how should the private sector work with the government sector is an open question, and we don't have a good answer for this right now. In the physical world, it's pretty easy. It's clear that if a criminal attacks you, your security guard can deal with that. But if a country attacks you, the military of your country should attack that. When in cyberspace, it's not always easy to differentiate between the two, and it's not clear who should do what. The next session is called Cyber Leaders, and it talks about people that are actually leading making big decisions in the world of cybersecurity. Some of those decisions actually influence all of us. And again, I encourage you to have the discussion with everyone about how we should work together, private sector, government, academia, and everyone. I'm very excited to call the first speaker to the stage of this next session, Christopher C. Krebs, Director, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, Department of Homeland Security, DHS of the United States. Christopher, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, or morning, whatever it is. I'm kind of on DC time still. Good to see everybody. I want to start off by first thanking Yuval for having me back this year, which means I guess I didn't screw it up too badly last year. Then I was actually under a different title and the head of a different agency. So you heard that I'm the first director of the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency. Last year, I was the Undersecretary for the National Protection and Programs Directorate at the Department of Homeland Security, a title that tells you nothing about what I do or did then or what our responsibilities are. Now, it's a little bit more clear. We are the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Still, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but you read it and you know what we do. We are the lead for the US government's cybersecurity efforts. We work with a broad range of partners within the intelligence community, the Department of Defense, the more technical departments, including our friends and partners from the Department of Energy who are also here today. We work to coordinate the federal government's efforts to protect the U.S. national critical infrastructure. But we're also a little bit unique in that I'm not a regulatory agency. My authorities are purely based on public-private partnerships. So we have to work with our private sector partners to provide them support in something of value so that they can manage their risk. That's what we just heard. Infrastructure in the U.S., owned, operated by the private sector, they are ultimately responsible for protecting their networks. They are the blue team. They own their risk. We have to help them manage that risk. So with that context in mind, I refer to us as the nation's risk advisor. And I'm carefully using words here. I'm not saying we're the nation's risk manager, because I'm not actually managing much risk on behalf of our critical infrastructure. But I'm advising, I'm providing insight, awareness, tools, capabilities to help our critical infrastructure protect themselves. So it's with this nation's risk advisor concept in mind that this past Saturday, I issued a statement. I issued a statement that said, I've talked to the cybersecurity community. I've looked at my own telemetry across the U.S. federal government. I'm worried. I've seen it for the last couple months. I've seen even more in the last several weeks. But over the last week alone, there had been a significant increase in activity associated with Iranian actors and proxies on behalf of the regime. Spear phishing, APT-33 spear phishing, password spraying, credential stuffing. Something was up. And I'm the nation's risk advisor. What do I do? So when I talk to these cybersecurity researchers and experts, they at times feel like they're a voice out in the wilderness, that they're a single voice. My job then is to take that sense of the community. Just like the intelligence community looks out across the various intelligence agencies and develops a sense of community based on intelligence, I developed a sense of community based on this community, the security community. What were we seeing, and how do we raise the level of awareness? How do we provide the critical infrastructure community the information they need to protect themselves? So what I said was, we are seeing an increase in activity. Take it seriously. Why? These are the guys, the Iranian actors, they're not just after intelligence. They're not just conducting intellectual property theft and stealing PII. These are the guys that are launching ransomware campaigns. These guys are the guys that are launching wiper campaigns. Treat this seriously. Because if they get inside your network and you lose control, you've lost your network. Take every incident, every compromise like it's going to be your last. Take it seriously. Ultimately, what this is coming down to us right now is about control. Who controls the network? Do you or does somebody else? So we issued this alert. Put it out there. Provided information to our private sector partners. And we got a pretty good response. But this is also more broadly representative of an additional area that we're putting a lot of investment in to right now that I think everybody in this room is increasingly thinking about. It's not just about the ones and the zeros. It's not just about the external actors that are launching attacks. It's also about what's going on inside the network. It's what are you putting into your network? What are you buying? What are you procuring? How are the things that you are making in the production line being assembled, and what's going out into your customer base? It's about supply chain and procurement security. We're increasingly worried about the provenance of equipment, the control over that equipment, and the relationships between the equipment and the company and foreign governments. This is probably best represented in an action we took about 2 years ago. the secretary issued a binding operational directive. Again, we're not great with words and branding and labels in the US, but nonetheless, it's a binding operational directive that applies to federal agencies that says if you have Kaspersky Antivirus products in your environment, you got 90 days. 30 days to figure it out where it is, another 30 days to figure out a plan, and 30 additional days to execute that plan. We did not do this arbitrarily. We did it based on a framework. 3 independent risk analyses. The first is technical, the second is legal, and the third is relationship. What do I mean here? So on the technical side, what's the thing? What does it do? Where does it operate? What's the quality of the engineering? What is the update cycle? If it's taken and hoovering up data, where is it sending it? On the legal assessment is what's the regime, the legal regime, under which that product or service or capability is manufactured, developed, controlled. Who has the ability to compel action over that company? And the third is the relationship piece. What is the company's relationship with that nation, with that country? So let me kind of walk you through this with Kaspersky. Antivirus operates at a level at which we don't really monitor. In fact, that's the point of AV. It's the monitor. Broad access across files, a system. And for a good AV product, what does it do? Big data. Takes it back to a central repository and runs analysis across the top. So in this case, AV, broad access, pulling it out, taking it back to Moscow. Subject to a set of laws, SORM and other, that would provide the intelligence services broad access, unfettered access to that data. And we know that Kaspersky has a historical relationship with the intelligence services. And so we have this model where we have to look at the technical attributes of the thing. We have to look at the legal regime over the top that can compel action. And what is the relationship between the company and the organization? This is a model that works broadly. It's agnostic to the company, it's agnostic to the country. But it allows us to look at anything, whether it's developed or deployed today, or it's going to build out the next generation of our telecommunications infrastructure. It is about defending today and securing tomorrow, which is in fact our motto. So we are looking not just the things that we have in our networks today, but we are looking at what's going into the next generation of our telecommunications infrastructure. So when I look at what it's going to take to build out 5G, I'm looking at what's the quality of the engineering? What's the update process look like? Who's maintaining these networks? In that company, what are the system of laws under which they operate? Who are they bound to? Who are they compelled to respond to if asked under their system of laws? And what is the relationship between that company and the home country? So when I'm thinking about the build out of the next generation of telecommunications infrastructure, if I know that there's a nation state whose private sector is an extension of its intelligence services, of its government itself, if I know that the quality of their engineering is less than ideal or optimal, that they don't have a strategy to improve the quality, I don't have a lot of confidence in their control of my network. So I'm not thinking necessarily about the confidentiality of data at this point. I'm thinking about the availability of data. I'm thinking about who controls that network. I'm pretty sure I don't want to give it over to somebody whose interests don't align with mine. And where we go increasingly through this analysis is it's between, at this point, a system of government, a system of governance. It's between digital authoritarianism and the fight for democracies. And again, this doesn't probably manifest anywhere else more dramatically or significantly than the fight right now that's been happening the last several years and longer and will continue for the rest of our natural lives, but it's defending democracy. 2016 was a wake-up call in the United States that cyber was no longer something about Sony or intellectual property or PII. This was that cybersecurity was a vector that could undermine democracy, that could jeopardize our very democratic institutions. So when 2018 came around, the midterm elections in the United States, we went all in. We worked with our state and local partners. We protected the 2018 democracy. And I know what they did in 16. I know what the Russians did in 16. I know what they tried to do in 18. I'm not sure what they're going to do in 2020 yet. But I'm pretty sure the people in this room have seen activity over the last couple months. Whether it's the EU parliamentary election or a number of the other elections that are going on. So I want to work with you. I want to work with people that are committed to defending democracy, that are seeing right now what the GRU, FSB, SVR are doing to attempt to undermine our way of lives, our control of the system. We're not going to lose control in the United States. I'm pretty sure Europe and member countries are not going to lose control. We can do this together. So when I'm thinking about what my priorities are going forward, I'm thinking about protecting 2020. I have socks that say protected 2020 right now. I have bumper stickers. It is the thing that I think about every day, all day. What are we going to do to defend democracy? So when you get out here and you enjoy the rest of Cyberweek, and when you go home, think about that. Think about defending democracy, because that's really what we're doing here. So thank you again for the opportunity, Yuval, to speak. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.